When Victoria Hale raised a shotgun on a stranger's porch that frozen Missouri morning, she had one question. Why was this man sending her messages describing the layout of her bedroom? Ethan Cole, holding his 5-year-old son behind him, had never seen her before in his life. But there was his face in the screenshots, his name on every threat. Someone had stolen his identity to terrorize a billionaire, and now they were both targets of a scheme neither understood. What started as an accusation would become a fight for survival, and the truth was more calculated than either could imagine. If you're hooked, stay with us until the end, and drop a like and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The cold bit hard that morning. Ethan Cole stood on his front porch with a mug of coffee going lukewarm in his hand, watching his breath fog in the air. The sun hadn't cleared the tree line yet, and the Missouri countryside was still locked in that gray pre-dawn quiet. He liked it this way. Peaceful. Predictable. Inside, his son Mason was still asleep, curled up under a quilt Ethan's mother had made before she passed. 5 years old, and already the center of Ethan's entire world. Everything he did, the early mornings, the late nights fixing fence posts, the careful budgeting, it was all for that kid. He took a sip of coffee and grimaced. Cold. He turned to head back inside when he heard it. Tires on gravel. Not the slow roll of a neighbor's truck. This was fast, aggressive. Ethan set the mug down on the porch railing and squinted toward the driveway. A black SUV came tearing up the road, kicking up dust and rocks, and skidded to a stop 20 feet from his house. The driver's door flew open. A woman stepped out. Ethan's first thought was that she didn't belong here. Not in this part of Missouri, not on his property, not anywhere near the life he'd built. She was tall, dark-haired, dressed in a wool coat that probably cost more than his truck. Her face was tight with fury, and she was holding something, a shotgun. Jesus Christ, Ethan muttered. She raised it, barrel pointed right at him. Don't move, she said. Her voice was sharp, controlled, but there was something else underneath it. Fear, maybe. Or exhaustion. Ethan's hands went up instinctively. Whoa, hold on. Shut up. She took a step closer, and he could see her hands shaking, not from the cold. I want to know why you've been doing this. Doing what? Ethan's heart was pounding now. Lady, I don't even know who you are. Bullshit. She pulled a phone from her coat pocket with one hand, keeping the shotgun trained on him with the other. She held the screen up. Explain this. Ethan squinted at it. Even from a few feet away, he could see a screenshot of a text message. The profile picture next to it made his stomach drop. It was him. His face. His name. Ethan Cole, right there in bold letters. The message itself was worse. I know you're alone tonight. I know which window you leave unlocked. What the hell? Ethan took a step forward, and she jerked the shotgun higher. I said don't move. That's not me, Ethan's voice cracked. I didn't send that. I don't even know who you are. You've been sending me messages for 3 months, she said. Her voice was trembling now. Describing my house, my schedule, things you couldn't possibly know unless you were watching me. I swear to you, I've never seen you before in my life. She stared at him, and for a moment, neither of them moved. The wind kicked up, rattling the bare branches overhead. Ethan could hear his pulse in his ears. Then how do you explain this? She held the phone higher. This is your face, your name, your account. I don't know, Ethan said, but it's not me. The front door creaked open behind him. Dad? Ethan's blood went cold. He turned to see Mason standing in the doorway, rubbing his eyes, his stuffed bear dragging on the floor. Mason, get inside, Ethan said quickly. The woman's eyes flicked to the boy, and something shifted in her expression. The shotgun lowered an inch. You have a kid, she said. Yeah. Ethan moved slowly, putting himself between her and Mason. So if you're going to shoot me, maybe wait till he's not watching. She didn't respond. She was staring at Mason, her face unreadable. Mason, go back to bed, Ethan said, softer now. I'll be inside in a minute. Mom. The boy hesitated, then shuffled back inside and closed the door. The woman lowered the shotgun completely. She let out a long breath, and for the first time, Ethan saw how exhausted she looked. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair pulled back like she'd done it in a hurry. Who are you? Ethan asked. She didn't answer right away. She stared at him like she was trying to decide whether to believe him. Victoria Hale, she said finally. The name didn't mean anything to him. Okay, Ethan said. Victoria, I'm Ethan, and I promise you, I didn't send those messages. Then who did? I don't know. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she pulled up something else on her phone and turned it toward him. It was another screenshot. This one was worse. A photo of her bedroom, taken from outside through the window. The curtains were half drawn, and you could see the edge of her bed, a lamp on the nightstand. Underneath it, a message. You should close your blinds. Ethan felt his stomach turn. I didn't take that, he said. I've never been wherever you live. San Francisco. I've never been to California in my life. She studied him, and he could see her trying to make sense of it, trying to decide if he was lying. If you didn't send these, she said slowly, then someone's using your identity. Yeah. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. That's what it looks like. Victoria's jaw tightened. She slipped the phone back into her pocket and set the shotgun down, leaning it against the porch railing. I need coffee, she said. Absurd. Inside, Ethan made a fresh pot while Victoria sat at the kitchen table staring at her phone. Mason had gone back to sleep, and the house was quiet except for the hum of the coffee maker. You drove all the way from San Francisco? Ethan asked. Flew to Kansas City, rented a car. She didn't look up. I found your address in one of the messages. You found my address. Yeah. And you came here with a shotgun. I wasn't sure what I'd be walking into. She glanced up at him. For all I knew, you were dangerous. Ethan poured 2 mugs and set one in front of her. Do I look dangerous? She didn't answer. She took a sip of coffee and winced. This is terrible. It's $4 store brand. What do you expect? She almost smiled. Almost. Ethan sat down across from her. So, 3 months of messages? 3 months. She pulled up her phone again and started scrolling. Started in January. At first they were just weird. Random comments about my company, my schedule. I thought it was a fan or something, but then they got specific. Locations, times, things no one should know. Like what? She hesitated, then turned the phone toward him. The messages were all from an account with his name and profile picture. Ethan felt a chill run through him as he read. I saw you leaving the office at 9:47 last night. You stopped for gas on Market Street. You were wearing the blue coat. He looked up at her. This is insane. It gets worse. She swiped to another message. 2 weeks ago I started getting these. The message was short. I'm closer than you think. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Did you go to the police? Of course I did. Victoria's voice was tight. They said they'd look into it. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't heard anything. So you decided to take matters into your own hands. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for someone to break into my house. She set the phone down. I have security, cameras, guards. But these messages kept coming. And then yesterday, I got this. She pulled up one more screenshot. It was a photo of Ethan's house. His house. Taken from the road, the same angle someone would see driving up. Underneath it, you should come see where I really live. Ethan's throat went dry. That's your house, Victoria said. Isn't it? Yeah. So whoever's doing this knows where you live, and they wanted me to come here. Ethan looked at her. Why? I don't know. Her voice was quieter now. But they went to a lot of trouble to make it happen. They sat in silence for a moment. Ethan's mind was racing. Someone had stolen his identity, used his face, his name, to terrorize this woman for months, and now they'd lured her here. Why you? Victoria asked. What? Why did they use you? Why your identity? Ethan shook his head. I have no idea. I'm nobody. I fix fences and raise my kid. I don't... He stopped. Wait. Victoria leaned forward. What? About 6 months ago, I got a weird email. Some company wanted to buy my land. What company? I don't remember the name. It was some corporate thing. I deleted it. Victoria's expression sharpened. Do you still have it? Maybe. Ethan pulled out his phone and started scrolling through his inbox. I don't check email much, mostly junk. He found it after a minute. The subject line read, "Exclusive offer, property acquisition." He opened it and handed the phone to Victoria. She read it, her eyes narrowing. "Meridian Holdings. You know them?" "No, but I can find out." She took a photo of the email with her own phone. "What did they offer you?" "I don't know. I didn't read the whole thing. I'm not selling." "Why not?" "Because this land's been in my family for 3 generations. I'm not handing it over to some corporation." Victoria looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. "I got a similar offer." Ethan frowned. "When?" 4 months ago. Different company, same idea. They wanted to buy a property I inherited in Sonoma County. I said no. And then the messages started. "Yeah." She met his eyes. A week later. They both went quiet. "This isn't random," Ethan said. "No." Victoria's voice was cold. "It's not." They spent the next hour going through everything. Victoria showed Ethan every message, every screenshot, every piece of evidence she'd collected. Ethan dug through his email and found 2 more offers from companies he didn't recognize, both asking about his property. By the time they were done, the sun had fully risen, and Mason was awake, padding into the kitchen in his pajamas. "Dad, I'm hungry." Ethan glanced at Victoria, who was still staring at her laptop screen. "Give me a minute, bud." "Who's that?" Mason pointed at Victoria. "A friend," Ethan said, because he didn't know what else to say. Victoria looked up. Her expression softened slightly. "Hi." Mason studied her. "Are you going to shoot my dad?" "Mason," Ethan started. "No," Victoria said. "I'm not." "Okay." Mason climbed into a chair. "Can I have pancakes?" Ethan sighed. "Yeah, pancakes." While he cooked, Victoria kept working. By the time he set a plate in front of Mason, she'd pulled up records on 3 different companies that had contacted them. "They're all shell corporations," she said. "Registered in Delaware, owned by other shell corporations. Can you trace them?" "I'm trying." She rubbed her eyes. "It's going to take time." "We don't have time," Ethan said. "Whoever's doing this already knows you're here." Victoria looked at him. "You think they're watching us?" "I think they've been watching both of us for months." She closed her laptop. "Then we need to move fast." "We? You think I'm leaving?" Victoria's voice was sharp. "Someone used your face to terrorize me. Someone lured me here, and now we're both targets." She stood up. "I'm not running, and neither are you." "Achoo." "Yum." Ethan looked at her. She was exhausted, angry, and probably in over her head. But there was something else in her eyes. Determination. The kind of stubbornness Ethan recognized because he saw it in the mirror every day. "All right," he said. "So what's the plan?" Victoria picked up her phone. "We find out who's behind this, and we make them regret it." They started with the property offers. Victoria pulled up her own records, emails, letters, phone calls from companies she'd never heard of. All of them had one thing in common. They wanted land. "My property in Sonoma is worth about $12 million, she said. "Vineyard, main house, guest house. It's been in my family for 40 years. "Mine's worth maybe $200,000, Ethan said. "If that." Victoria frowned. "Then why target you?" "I don't know. Location, maybe?" She pulled up a map on her laptop and marked both properties. "Yours is rural, mine's wine country. They're not even in the same state. So what's the connection?" Victoria stared at the screen. "I don't know yet." Mason tugged on Ethan's sleeve. "Dad, can I watch cartoons?" "Yeah, go ahead." The boy ran off and Ethan turned back to Victoria. "You really think this is about land?" he asked. "I think someone wants us gone," Victoria said. "And they're willing to go to a lot of trouble to make it happen." She pulled up another file. This one a list of recent property acquisitions in Missouri and California. She scanned through it, her eyes moving fast. Then she stopped. "What?" Ethan asked. She turned the laptop toward him. "Look at this." It was a news article from 2 months ago. The headline read, "Meridian Holdings expands rural development initiative." Ethan skimmed it. The article talked about a company buying up rural land across the Midwest, promising economic development and job creation. Meridian Holdings, Ethan said. That's the company that emailed me. Yeah, boy. Victoria scrolled down. And look who owns it. At the bottom of the article was a name, Marcus Hale. Ethan looked at her. Hale? Like your last name? Victoria's face had gone pale. He's my uncle, she said. Mom, the silence in the kitchen was heavy. Your uncle, Ethan repeated. Yeah. Victoria's voice was flat. My father's brother. And he's trying to buy up land. Apparently. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Why would your uncle be involved in this? I don't know. Victoria's jaw was tight. We're not close. I haven't spoken to him in years. Why not? She hesitated. He and my father had a falling out over the family business. My father built Hale Industries from nothing, and when he died, I inherited it. Marcus thought it should have been his. So he's got a grudge. He's got more than a grudge. Victoria stood up and started pacing. He tried to sue me for control of the company. Lost. Then he started his own venture capital firm, Meridian Holdings. And now he's buying land. Yeah, Ethan watched her. You think he's behind the messages? I don't know. Victoria stopped pacing. But if he is, this is about more than just land. What do you mean? She looked at him. He wants to hurt me. He's wanted that for a long time. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. He thought about Mason, asleep in the next room, and felt a knot tighten in his chest. So what do we do? He asked. Victoria pulled out her phone. I'm going to make some calls, see what I can find out. And if your uncle really is behind this? Her eyes were cold. Then we prove it. The rest of the day blurred together. Victoria made call after call, pulling strings with contacts Ethan didn't even know existed. Lawyers, investigators, people who owed her favors. Ethan kept Mason busy, trying to act like everything was normal. But every time he looked out the window, he felt like someone was watching. By evening, Victoria had something. One of my investigators found a connection, she said, sitting back down at the kitchen table. Meridian Holdings has been buying properties in a specific corridor. Rural land, mostly. Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska. Why? Infrastructure. She pulled up a map on her laptop. There's a proposed freight rail line. If it gets approved, the land values will skyrocket. Ethan looked at the map. His property was right in the middle of the corridor. So your uncle wants to buy up the land cheap, then sell it when the rail line goes through. Exactly. Victoria's voice was grim. And anyone who won't sell becomes a problem. So he terrorizes them into selling. Or worse. She met his eyes. 2 of the properties in this corridor were sold under duress. One owner was facing a lawsuit. The other had his business shut down by the health department. You think your uncle was behind that? I think Marcus doesn't take no for an answer. Ethan felt his stomach turn. And now he's coming after us. Victoria nodded. We're in his way. That night, after Mason had gone to bed, Ethan and Victoria sat on the porch. The air was freezing, but neither of them wanted to stay inside. You should leave, Ethan said. Victoria looked at him. What? Go back to San Francisco. You've got resources, security. You don't need to be here. And you? I'll figure it out. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think he's just going to leave you alone? I don't know, Ak. He won't. Victoria's voice was hard. He went to a lot of trouble to set this up. And if he's willing to fake your identity to terrorize me, he's willing to do a lot worse. Ethan didn't respond. He stared out at the dark fields, the wind moving through the trees. I'm not leaving, Victoria said. Why not? Because I'm tired of running. She looked at him. I've spent my whole life dealing with people like Marcus, people who think they can take whatever they want. And I'm done. Ethan met her eyes. There was something fierce in them, something that reminded him why she'd survived in a world he couldn't even imagine. All right, he said. Then we do this together. Victoria nodded. Together. The next morning, they got a visitor. Ethan heard the car first, another expensive SUV, rolling up the driveway. He stepped onto the porch, and Victoria followed. A man got out. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Ethan's truck. "Victoria," the man said, smiling. "What a surprise." Victoria's face went cold. "Marcus." Marcus Hale walked toward them, hands in his pockets, looking completely at ease. "And you must be Mr. Cole," he said, turning to Ethan. "I've heard a lot about you." Ethan didn't respond. Marcus looked around. "Nice place. Quiet. I can see why you're attached to it." "What do you want?" Victoria's voice was sharp. Marcus smiled. "Just wanted to check in, see how you two were doing." "We're fine." "Good, good." He looked at Ethan. "You know, Mr. Cole, I've been trying to reach you about your property." "I'm not selling," Ethan said. "Everyone says that." Marcus's smile didn't waver. "Until they don't." "I mean it." "I'm sure you do." Marcus glanced at Victoria. "But sometimes circumstances change, don't they, Victoria?" Victoria's jaw tightened. "Get off his property. I'm just here to talk. You're here to threaten us." Marcus laughed. "Threaten? Victoria, you know me better than that." "I know exactly what you are." The smile faded. Marcus looked at her, and for a moment, Ethan saw something dark behind his eyes. "Careful," Marcus said softly. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "Good," Victoria said. "I hope it's impossible." Marcus stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to Ethan. "Think about my offer, Mr. Cole," he said, "before things get complicated." He walked back to his car, got in, and drove away. Ethan and Victoria stood there, watching the dust settle. "That was a threat," Ethan said. "Yeah," Victoria said. "It was." Marcus Hale's taillights disappeared down the road, leaving a wake of dust that hung in the cold air like smoke. Ethan stood on the porch, hands clenched at his sides, watching until there was nothing left to see. "That went well?" Victoria said. Ethan turned to look at her. She was still staring at the empty driveway, her face unreadable. "He just showed up here," Ethan said, "to our faces, like he's untouchable." "He thinks he is." Victoria pulled her coat tighter. "And maybe he's right." "Oh, you don't believe that." "I don't know what I believe anymore." She turned and walked back inside, and Ethan followed. Mason was at the kitchen table, eating cereal and watching cartoons on Ethan's old laptop. He looked up when they came in. "Who was that man?" "Nobody important," Ethan said. "He had a nice car." "Yeah, well, nice cars don't make nice people." Mason went back to his cereal, and Ethan sat down across from Victoria. She had her phone out again, scrolling through something. "What are you looking for, he asked. "Anything." Her voice was tight. "Marcus doesn't do his own dirty work. He hires people. I'm trying to find out who." "You think he hired someone to fake my identity?" "I think he hired someone to do a lot more than that." She looked up. "The messages, the photos, the surveillance. That takes resources, money, and Marcus has both." Ethan rubbed his face. He hadn't slept much the night before, and the weight of everything was starting to press down on him. A week ago, his biggest problem was fixing a busted water heater. Now he was caught in the middle of something he didn't understand, with a man who just threatened him on his own porch. "We need proof," Victoria said. "Proof of what?" "That Marcus is behind this. That he's the one who orchestrated the fake account, the messages, all of it. And how do we get that, right?" Victoria didn't answer right away. She stared at her phone, her jaw working like she was chewing on something she didn't want to say. "I have an idea," she said finally. "But you're not going to like it. Try me." She met his eyes. "I think we should go to San Francisco." Ethan blinked. "What?" "Marcus is based there. His company, his network, everything. If we're going to find proof, that's where it'll be." "You want me to leave Missouri? With my kid?" "I want you to stay alive." Victoria's voice was sharp. "Marcus knows where you live. He knows your routine. If he's willing to come here once, he'll come again." "So your solution is to go to him?" "My solution is to stop playing defense." She leaned forward. "We can't just sit here and wait for him to make the next move. We need to get ahead of this." Ethan looked at Mason, who was still absorbed in his cartoons, oblivious to the conversation happening around him. "I can't just uproot my kid," Ethan said. "Then leave him with someone you trust. There's nobody." Ethan's voice was harder than he meant it to be. "It's just me and him. That's how it's been since his mom left." Victoria went quiet. For a moment, the only sound was the tinny audio from the laptop. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be." Ethan stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the fields. "I'm not going to put him in danger. Not for this." "You think staying here is safer?" He didn't have an answer for that. Victoria stood and walked over to him. "Look, I get it. You want to protect him, but Marcus isn't going to stop, and the longer we wait, the worse this gets." Ethan didn't respond. He kept his eyes on the horizon, on the land that had been in his family for generations, the land Marcus Hale wanted to take. "Give me a day," Victoria said. "Let me make some calls, see what I can line up. If we're going to do this, we need to do it smart." Ethan finally looked at her. "And if we can't find proof, then we make him think we did." Bad. Victoria spent the rest of the morning on the phone. Ethan could hear her in the next room, her voice clipped and professional, talking to people whose names he didn't recognize. Lawyers, investigators, someone she called a forensic accountant. Mason got bored with cartoons and dragged Ethan outside to throw a football. The air was still cold, but the sun had come out, and it felt good to move, to do something normal. "Dad, are we going on a trip?" Mason asked, catching the ball and tucking it under his arm. "Maybe," Ethan said. "Why?" "That lady said something about San Francisco." "You were listening?" Then Mason shrugged. "She talks loud." Ethan almost smiled. "Yeah, she does." "Is she your girlfriend?" "No." Ethan threw the ball and Mason caught it. "She's just someone I'm helping." "She seems mad." "She's got a lot going on." Mason threw the ball back, a wobbly spiral that Ethan had to dive for. "I like it here. I don't want to move." "We're not moving," Ethan said. "I promise." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure it was true. By noon, Victoria had a plan. "I've got a contact in San Francisco," she said, sitting back down at the kitchen table. "Guy named Leo Chen. He's a private investigator. Used to work corporate espionage cases." "Corporate espionage," Ethan repeated. "Yeah, he's good. Discreet. And he owes me a favor." "What kind of favor?" Victoria waved a hand. "Long story. Point is, he can get us access to things we can't get on our own. Financial records, communications, security footage." "And you trust him?" "As much as I trust anyone." Ethan sat down. "So what's the plan?" "We fly out tomorrow. Leo meets us, walks us through what he's found. If there's a connection between Marcus and the fake account, he'll find it. And if there's not?" Victoria's jaw tightened. "Then we dig deeper." Ethan looked at her. She was exhausted. He could see it in the way her shoulders sagged, the way her eyes kept drifting to the window like she expected someone to show up. But there was something else there too, a stubbornness that reminded him of himself. "All right," he said. "We go to San Francisco. What about Mason?" Ethan hesitated. He'd been thinking about that all morning. There was no one he trusted to watch his son. No family left, no neighbors close enough. But he also couldn't bring a 5-year-old into whatever this was turning into. "I'll figure it out," he said. Victoria nodded. "We leave tomorrow morning. I'll book the flights." Net. That afternoon, Ethan called the only person he could think of, Linda Marsh, a woman who lived 2 miles down the road. She was in her 60s, ran a small daycare out of her house, and had known Ethan since he was a kid. "Linda, it's Ethan. Ethan Cole. Haven't heard from you in a while. Everything all right?" "Yeah, well, mostly. I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" "But I need someone to watch Mason for a few days, maybe a week." There was a pause. "A week? Ethan, what's going on?" "Yeah, it's complicated. I need to take care of something, and I can't bring him with me." Another pause. "Is he in trouble?" "No, I am." Linda sighed. "All right. Bring him by tonight. But you owe me an explanation when you get back. I know. Thank you, Linda. He hung up and found Mason in the living room, building something with blocks. Hey, bud, you're going to stay with Mrs. Marsh for a little while. Mason looked up. Why? Because I have to go somewhere. Where? Yeah, California. Mason frowned. Can I come? Not this time. Why not? Ethan crouched down next to him. Because it's not safe. Mason's face got that stubborn look Ethan knew too well. I want to go with you. I know, but you can't. That's not fair. I know that too. Ethan put a hand on his son's shoulder. But I need you to trust me, okay? I'll be back as soon as I can. Mason didn't say anything. He just went back to his blocks, and Ethan felt his chest tighten. But I see. That evening, Ethan packed a bag. He didn't own much in the way of nice clothes, a couple of button-downs, one pair of jeans that didn't have holes in them. He threw in a jacket and his phone charger and zipped the bag shut. Victoria was in the kitchen, working on her laptop. She looked up when he came in. You ready? As ready as I'm going to be. She nodded and went back to typing. Ethan poured himself a cup of coffee and sat down across from her. Can I ask you something? He said. Sure. Why are you doing this? Victoria stopped typing. What do you mean? You could have gone to the cops, hired security. You've got the money and the resources to handle this from a distance. But instead, you're here. Why? She was quiet for a moment. Then she closed the laptop. Because I'm tired of being afraid, she said. Marcus has been in my life for years, always in the background, always making things difficult. And I've spent most of that time just trying to avoid him, keep my head down, stay out of his way. She looked at Ethan. But this? What he's doing to you, to me? It's different. And if I let him get away with it, he'll never stop. Ethan nodded. I get that. Do you? Oh, yeah. He took a sip of coffee. I've spent most of my life trying to keep things simple. Stay on my land, raise my kid, don't make waves. But sometimes you can't avoid the waves. Sometimes they come for you anyway. Victoria almost smiled. That's one way to put it. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was the kind of sunset Ethan had seen 1,000 times, but tonight it felt different, like something was ending. We should get some sleep, Victoria said finally. Early flight tomorrow. Yeah. She stood and walked toward the guest room, then stopped in the doorway. Ethan? Yeah? Thank you for trusting me. He looked at her. You came here with a shotgun. Trust is a strong word. She smiled, really smiled this time. Fair point. The next morning, Ethan dropped Mason off at Linda's house. The boy clung to him for a long time, and Ethan had to pry his arms loose. I'll be back soon, he said. I promise. Mason didn't say anything. He just stood there on Linda's porch, holding his stuffed bear, watching as Ethan got back in the truck. Linda came to the door. He'll be fine. You just take care of whatever this is. I will. Ethan drove back to the house, where Victoria was waiting with her bag. They loaded everything into her rental car and headed for the airport. The drive was quiet. Ethan stared out the window, watching the Missouri countryside blur past. Fields and farmhouses and small towns that looked like they hadn't changed in 50 years. You ever been to San Francisco? Victoria asked. No. You'll hate it. Why? Too many people, too much noise, too expensive. Ethan glanced at her. Sounds like your kind of place. She laughed. I guess it is. They made it to the airport with time to spare. Ethan had never flown before, and the whole process felt surreal. Security lines, boarding passes, a plane that smelled like recycled air and bad coffee. Victoria sat next to him, scrolling through her phone. Ethan stared out the window as the plane lifted off, watching the ground fall away beneath them. You okay? Victoria asked. Yeah. He wasn't sure if it was true. They landed in San Francisco just after noon. The city hit Ethan like a wall. Tall buildings, traffic, people, everywhere. Victoria moved through it like she'd been born to it, navigating the crowds with ease. They took a cab to a hotel downtown. Ethan's room was small but clean, with a view of the street below. He dropped his bag on the bed and looked out the window. The city stretched out in every direction, a maze of concrete and glass. There was a knock on the door. Victoria. "Leo's meeting us in an hour," she said. "You ready?" "As ready as I'm going to be." Hosai. Leo Chen was not what Ethan expected. He was young, maybe 30, with messy hair and a leather jacket that looked like it had seen better days. They met him at a coffee shop in the Mission District, a cramped little place with chipped tables and the kind of espresso machine that looked like it could launch into space. "Victoria," Leo said, standing to shake her hand. "Been a while. Thanks for doing this on short notice." "You kidding? I love a good corporate conspiracy." He turned to Ethan. "You must be the guy with the stolen identity." "That's me." Leo grinned. "Don't worry, we'll figure it out." They sat down, and Leo pulled out a laptop. "All right, so I've been digging into Meridian Holdings. Interesting company. Lots of shell corporations, offshore accounts, the usual shady stuff." "Can you trace it back to Marcus?" Victoria asked. "I'm working on it. But here's the thing. Your uncle's smart. He doesn't leave a paper trail. Everything's buried under layers of legal bullshit. So we've got nothing." "I didn't say that." Leo turned the laptop toward them. "I found something. A guy named Aaron Trask. He's a freelance tech contractor. Does a lot of work for Meridian." "What kind of work?" Ethan asked. "Digital stuff. Web design. Social media management." Leo pulled up a file. "But here's the kicker. 3 months ago, he was paid 50 grand for something called reputation management." Victoria leaned forward. "What does that mean?" "It means he was hired to mess with someone's reputation. Fake accounts, doctored images, harassment campaigns." Leo looked at Ethan. "Sound familiar?" Ethan's stomach turned. "Yeah, Opio. I think this guy's the one who built the fake account using your identity," Leo said. "And if I'm right, he's got records, emails, files, proof that Marcus hired him." "Where is he?" Victoria asked. "That's the problem. He's gone dark. No social media activity, no credit card transactions. It's like he dropped off the map." "People don't just disappear," Victoria said. "They do if they're scared." Leo closed the laptop. "Or if someone paid them to." Ethan looked at Victoria. "So what do we do?" "We find him," she said. Leo had an address. Wasn't much. An apartment in the Tenderloin, one of the rougher parts of the city. But it was a start. They went that evening, the three of them in Leo's beat-up Honda. The neighborhood was rough, all right. Boarded-up windows, graffiti on every surface, people on the corners who watched them pass with suspicious eyes. Leo parked half a block away. "You sure about this?" "No," Victoria said, "but we're doing it anyway." They walked to the building, a 5-story apartment complex that looked like it should have been condemned years ago. Leo checked the mailboxes and found Trask's name on the 3rd floor. They climbed the stairs. The hallway smelled like mildew and something Ethan didn't want to identify. Leo knocked on the door. No answer. He knocked again. "Aaron Trask? We just want to talk." Still nothing. Leo looked at Victoria. "You want me to pick the lock?" "Can you do that?" "Boss. I didn't always work the legal side of things." Victoria glanced at Ethan, who shrugged. Leo pulled out a small toolkit and went to work. 30 seconds later, the door swung open. The apartment was a mess. Clothes everywhere, empty takeout containers, a desk covered in monitors and tangled cables. But no Aaron Trask. "He's gone," Leo said. Victoria walked over to the desk and started looking through the papers scattered across it. Ethan followed, scanning the room. "Victoria," Leo said, "you need to see this." She walked over to where he was standing near one of the monitors. On the screen was a folder labeled Hail Project. Victoria opened it. Inside were files, dozens of them, screenshots of the fake account, photos of Ethan, photos of Victoria, messages, timestamps, and at the top a document titled Phase 1, Target Acquisition. Victoria opened it. The first line read, "Client, Marcus Hale. Objective, forced sale of contested properties through psychological destabilization." Ethan felt his blood go cold. "He documented everything," Leo said. "Every message, every photo, every step of the plan." Victoria kept scrolling, There were notes about Ethan's routine, his son, his property, everything Marcus needed to know to make Ethan's life hell. "This is it," she said. "This is proof." "We need to copy all of this," Leo said, pulling out a USB drive. But before he could plug it in, they heard footsteps in the hallway. Fast footsteps. Leo froze. Someone's coming. The door slammed open and a man rushed in, thin, wild-eyed, holding a baseball bat. "Who the hell are you?" he shouted. "Aaron Trask?" Leo said. "Get out of my apartment." "Well, we're not here to hurt you," Victoria said, raising her hands. "We just want to talk." You're working for him, aren't you?" Trask's voice was shaking. "He sent you to shut me up." "We're not working for Marcus," Victoria said. "We're trying to stop him." Trask looked at her, then at Ethan, then at Leo. The bat was still raised. "I don't believe you." "Then look at this," Victoria said, pointing to the monitor. "This is your work, right? The fake account. The messages." Trask's eyes flicked to the screen. "So what?" "So we know Marcus hired you, and we need you to testify." Trask laughed, but it was a bitter, broken sound. "Testify? Are you insane? You know what he'll do to me?" "We can protect you," Victoria said. "No, you can't." Trask lowered the bat slightly. "You have no idea what he's capable of." "Then tell us," Ethan said. Trask looked at him. "You're the guy, the one from Missouri." "Yeah. I'm sorry." Trask's voice cracked. I didn't know what he was going to do with it. He just said it was for leverage, that's all." "Leverage for what?" Victoria asked. "The land. He needed you both out of the way. Said you'd sell if you were scared enough." Trask sat down on the edge of the couch, the bat still in his hands. "I needed the money. I didn't ask questions." "You destroyed my life," Victoria said, her voice hard. "I know." Trask put his head in his hands. "And now he's going to destroy mine." "Why?" Leo asked. "Because I kept copies. Of everything." Trask looked up. "I thought it was insurance in case he tried to screw me. But now he knows I have them. And he's coming for me." "Then come with us," Victoria said. "We go to the police. You give them the files. You testify." "He'll kill me." "He'll kill you if you stay here," Ethan said. Trask looked at him, and for a moment, Ethan saw the same fear he'd felt that morning Marcus showed up on his porch. "All right," Trask said finally. "I'll do it." Leo started copying the files onto the USB drive. It took 5 minutes that felt like an hour. The whole time, Ethan kept glancing at the door, waiting for someone else to show up. When it was done, Leo pocketed the drive. "We need to move. Now." They left the apartment and headed back down the stairs. But when they reached the ground floor, the front door opened. 3 men stepped inside. Big guys. Suits. The kind of people who didn't need to say anything to make their point. "Victoria Hale," the one in front said. "Mr. Hale would like a word." Victoria didn't move. "Tell him I'm busy." The man smiled. "That wasn't a request." Ethan stepped forward. "We're leaving." The man looked at him like he was a bug. "No, you're not." And that's when Trask bolted. He shoved past them and ran for the back exit. One of the men went after him, but Leo stuck out a leg and tripped him. The guy went down hard, and chaos erupted. Ethan grabbed Victoria's arm. "Go!" They ran. Out the back into an alley that smelled like garbage and rain. Behind them, Ethan could hear shouting, footsteps pounding on concrete. They turned a corner, then another. Leo was ahead of them, weaving through the maze of back streets like he'd done this before. "This way!" he shouted. They followed him into a parking garage, up 3 levels, to where his car was parked. They piled in, and Leo floored it. The tires squealed as they shot out of the garage and onto the street. Ethan looked back, but no one was following. "Where's Trask?" Victoria asked, breathing hard. "I don't know," Leo said. "He ran the other way." Victoria cursed. "We need to find him." "We need to get somewhere safe first," Leo said. "If those guys know where I parked, they know where I live." "Where do we go?" Ethan asked. Victoria pulled out her phone. "I know a place." The place turned out to be a high-rise condo in Pacific Heights, clean, expensive. The kind of place Ethan would never step foot in under normal circumstances. "Who lives here?" he asked as Victoria unlocked the door. "I do. One of my places." "One of your places," Ethan repeated. "I travel a lot." Inside, the condo was all glass and modern furniture. Victoria went straight to the kitchen and poured herself a drink. "You want one?" she asked. "Yeah, She poured him a whiskey, and he downed it in one go. Leo was at the window, looking out at the city. "They're going to come after us." "I know," Victoria said. "We need to go to the police, now." "With what? A USB drive full of files we stole from a man's apartment? It's evidence. It's inadmissible," Victoria said. "We broke in. We took it without a warrant. Any lawyer worth their salt will get it thrown out." "So what do we do?" Ethan asked. Victoria looked at him. "We find Trask, and we make him go on record." "He's probably halfway to Mexico by now," Leo said. "Maybe. Or maybe he's hiding." Victoria pulled out her phone. "I'm going to make some calls, see if anyone's seen him." While she did that, Ethan sat down on the couch. His hands were shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off, and the reality of what had just happened was sinking in. Leo sat down next to him. "You okay?" "No." "Yeah. Fair. Well." They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the city glittered like a circuit board, all lights and movement. "This is insane," Ethan said. "Welcome to Victoria's world," Leo said. "It's always like this." "How do you deal with it?" Leo shrugged. "You get used to it. Or you don't, and you quit." "You ever think about quitting?" "Every day." Leo smiled. "But then something interesting happens, and I stick around." Victoria came back into the room. "I've got a lead. Trask has a friend in Oakland, guy named Dennis Park. If he's hiding, that's where he'll be." "How do you know?" Ethan asked. "Because Dennis owes me a favor, and he just called to tell me Trask showed up at his door an hour ago." Leo stood. "Then let's go." "Not tonight," Victoria said. "It's too dangerous. We go in the morning, give Trask time to calm down." "And if Marcus finds him first?" Ethan asked. Victoria's jaw tightened. "Then we're screwed." Ethan didn't sleep that night. He lay on the guest bed in Victoria's condo, staring at the ceiling, listening to the city hum outside the window. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those men in the apartment building, the way they'd moved, the way they'd looked at him like he was already dead. He thought about Mason, about whether Linda would keep him safe if things went south, about whether he'd ever see his son again. At some point, he gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen. Victoria was already there, sitting at the counter with her laptop open and a cup of coffee going cold next to her. "You're up early," Ethan said. "I didn't go to bed." She didn't look away from the screen. Ethan poured himself coffee and sat down across from her. "What are you working on?" Trying to figure out how deep this goes. She turned the laptop toward him. On the screen was a web of names and companies, all connected by lines that looked like a conspiracy theorist's fever dream. "Marcus has been planning this for years. The land acquisitions, the shell companies, the pressure campaigns. It's all connected." "How many people has he done this to?" "At least a dozen that I can find, maybe more." Victoria's voice was tight. "He finds someone with valuable land, someone vulnerable. Then he makes their life hell until they sell." "And no one stopped him?" "He's careful. Always uses intermediaries. Always stays just clean enough that nothing sticks." She closed the laptop. But this time he messed up. He went after the wrong person. "You?" "Both of us." She looked at him. "You're not going to roll over, and neither am I." Ethan took a sip of coffee. It was bitter, but it helped. "What time are we leaving?" 7. Leo's picking us up. "And if Trask won't talk," Victoria's jaw tightened, "then we make him." Leo showed up at 7 on the dot, looking like he hadn't slept either. They piled into his car and headed across the Bay Bridge toward Oakland. The morning traffic was brutal, a river of brake lights and honking horns that made Ethan's head throb. "Dennis lives in Rock Ridge," Leo said. "Nice neighborhood, quiet. Trask picked a good place to hide." "Unless Marcus already found him," Victoria said. "Let's hope not." They pulled up to a small house on a tree-lined street. It looked normal, peaceful, the kind of place where nothing bad ever happened. Leo knocked on the door. A moment later, it opened a crack, and a man peered out. He was Asian, maybe 40, with glasses and the wary look of someone who'd seen too much. "Leo," Dennis said, "you didn't mention you were bringing friends." "They're with me." "Is he here?" Dennis hesitated, then opened the door wider. "Yeah, he's here, but he's a mess." They followed Dennis inside. The house was neat, lived in, with bookshelves lining the walls and the smell of fresh coffee in the air. Dennis led them to the living room, where Aaron Trask was sitting on the couch, looking like a ghost. His face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed. He looked up when they walked in, and his expression went from scared to terrified. "You," he said, pointing at Victoria. "You're going to get me killed." "We're trying to keep you alive, Victoria said. "By dragging me into this? By making me go on record?" Trask stood up, his hands shaking. "You don't get it. Marcus Hale doesn't lose. He doesn't forgive. And he sure as hell doesn't forget." "Then why did you keep the files?" Ethan asked. Trask looked at him. "Because I'm an idiot. Or because you knew this was wrong," Victoria said. "And you wanted insurance." "A lot of good that did me." Trask sank back onto the couch. "I should have deleted everything. Should have taken the money and disappeared." "But you didn't," Leo said. "Because some part of you knew this would come back around." Trask didn't respond. He just stared at the floor, his hands clenched together. Victoria sat down next to him. "Aaron, I know you're scared, I get it. But if you don't help us, Marcus wins. And he's going to do this to someone else. And someone after that, until someone stops him." "Why does it have to be me?" "Because you're the one with the evidence," Victoria said. "You're the one who built the fake account. You're the one who can connect the dots." Trask looked at her, and Ethan could see the fear in his eyes. But there was something else there too. Guilt, maybe. Or shame. "What do you need me to do?" Trask asked finally. "Go on record," Victoria said. "Tell the police what Marcus hired you to do. Give them the files. Testify if it comes to that. And then what? I spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder?" "We'll protect you," Leo said. Trask laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "How? You're not the FBI. You're not even cops." "No," Victoria said. "But I've got lawyers, good ones. And I've got enough money to make sure you disappear if you need to." Trask looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right, I'll do it." Mabachin. They spent the next hour going through the files on Leo's USB drive. Trask walked them through every piece of evidence. The emails from Marcus. The instructions for the fake account. The photos of Ethan and Victoria that Trask had pulled from surveillance footage. It was damning, all of it. "This is enough," Leo said. "We take this to the police and Marcus is done." "Maybe," Victoria said, "but we need to be smart about it. If we go to the wrong precinct, the wrong detective, this gets buried." "So who do we go to?" Ethan asked. Victoria pulled out her phone. "I know someone. Federal prosecutor. She's been trying to nail white-collar criminals for years. If anyone will take this seriously, it's her." She made the call. "Iskomchimasem." Ethan listened as she explained the situation, her voice calm and professional. After a few minutes, she hung up. "She'll see us this afternoon, Victoria said. "Her office? Downtown San Francisco." "That's it?" Trask asked. "We just hand over the files and hope for the best?" "No," Victoria said. "We hand over the files and make sure she understands what's at stake." They left Dennis's house just after noon. The plan was to grab lunch, regroup, and then meet with the prosecutor at 3. But as they were pulling out of the driveway, Leo's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face went pale. "What?" Victoria asked. "It's a news alert." He handed her the phone. Victoria read it and her expression darkened. She passed the phone to Ethan. The headline read, "Tech contractor found dead in San Francisco apartment. Police suspect foul play." Ethan's stomach dropped. "This is about Trask's apartment, isn't it?" "Yeah," Leo said. "Someone died there last night." "Who?" Trask asked, his voice shaking. Leo pulled up the full article. "It doesn't say. Just that the body was found this morning by the building manager." Victoria looked at Trask. "Do you know anyone else who lives in that building?" "No, I keep to myself." "Then who?" Ethan started, but Victoria cut him off. It doesn't matter. What matters is that Marcus is cleaning up loose ends. And if he's willing to kill someone, he's not going to stop until we're all gone. Trask's face went even paler. We need to leave. Now. We're going to the prosecutor, Victoria said. That's the plan. The plan's going to get us killed. The plan's going to put Marcus in prison, Victoria said. So sit down and shut up. Trask opened his mouth to argue, but something in Victoria's expression made him stop. He sat back in his seat, his hands trembling. Leo pulled out onto the street, and they drove in tense silence. Ethan kept checking the mirrors, waiting for a black SUV to appear behind them. But the road stayed clear. They grabbed sandwiches from a deli and ate in the car. No one talked much. The weight of what they were about to do hung over them like a storm cloud. At 2:30, they headed downtown. The prosecutor's office was in a federal building near City Hall, a massive concrete structure that looked like it had been designed to intimidate. They parked in a nearby garage and walked to the building. Security was tight, metal detectors, ID checks, the works. Ethan felt his pulse quicken as they passed through, but no one stopped them. The prosecutor's office was on the 7th floor. Her name was Rebecca Nguyen, and she met them in a conference room with a view of the city. Victoria, Rebecca said, shaking her hand. It's been a while. Thanks for seeing us on short notice. Rebecca turned to Ethan and Leo. And you are? Ethan Cole. And this is Leo Chen. Rebecca nodded, then looked at Trask. And you? Aaron Trask. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. The tech contractor? Trask blinked. How did you? I've been watching Meridian Holdings for 6 months, Rebecca said. Your name came up in a few places. Then you know what Marcus is doing, Victoria said. I know he's dirty, but knowing and proving are two different things. Rebecca sat down and gestured for them to do the same. So, what do you have for me? Leo pulled out the USB drive and set it on the table. Everything you need to bury him. Rebecca picked up the drive and turned it over in her hands. Where did you get this? Oh, Trask's apartment, Leo said. And how did you get into his apartment? Leo hesitated. Does it matter? It does if you want this to hold up in court. We had his permission, Victoria said quickly. Rebecca looked at Trask. Is that true? Trask nodded. Yeah, I let them in. Rebecca didn't look convinced, but she plugged the drive into her laptop. For the next 30 minutes, she went through the files. Her expression didn't change, but Ethan could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. Finally, she looked up. This is good. Really good. But I need more than files. I need testimony. I'll testify, Trask said. Rebecca studied him. You understand what that means? You'll be painted as a co-conspirator. Your career is over. And if Marcus has half the resources I think he does, your life is going to get very difficult. It's already difficult, Trask said. At least this way it means something. Rebecca nodded. All right, I'll start the process. But I need you to stay available. No running, no hiding. What about protection? Victoria asked. I can arrange a safe house, temporary, until we get the indictment. And how long will that take? A few weeks, maybe a month. A month? Trask's voice cracked. I can't hide for a month. You won't be hiding, Rebecca said. You'll be in protective custody. It's different. Trask looked at Victoria, then at Ethan. This is insane. It's the only way, Victoria said. Rebecca stood. I'll make some calls, get things moving. In the meantime, all of you need to stay out of trouble. No more breaking into apartments. No more amateur detective work. Let the professionals handle it. What about Marcus? Ethan asked. He's not going to just sit around waiting for you to build a case. Leave Marcus to me, Rebecca said. I've been waiting for a chance like this for a long time. They left the federal building just after 5. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city. Ethan felt a strange mix of relief and dread. They'd done what they came to do, but it didn't feel like a victory. What now? Leo asked as they walked back to the car. Now we wait, Victoria said, and hope Marcus doesn't figure out what we just did, Ethan added. They drove back to Victoria's condo in silence. When they got there, Leo headed home, and Trask went to pack a bag for the safe house. Ethan and Victoria stood in the kitchen, too wired to sit down. You think Rebecca can pull this off? Ethan asked. I don't know, Victoria said, but she's our best shot. Ethan poured himself a drink. I keep thinking about that body. The one they found in Trask's building. Don't. I can't help it. What if that was supposed to be him? What if Marcus sent someone to kill Trask and they got the wrong person? Victoria didn't respond. She just stared out the window, her arms crossed. This is my fault, Ethan said. What? If I just sold the land, if I'd just taken the money and walked away, none of this would have happened. Victoria turned to look at him. You really believe that? I don't know. Well, I do. Her voice was sharp. Marcus would have found another target, another person to terrorize, and eventually he would have come after me anyway. So don't blame yourself for his choices. Ethan looked at her. You always this tough? Only when I have to be. They stood there for a moment, the weight of everything pressing down on them. Then Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her expression changed. What is it? Ethan asked. Rebecca, she wants us back at her office. Now. Why? Victoria didn't answer. She just grabbed her coat and headed for the door. They made it back to the federal building in 20 minutes. Rebecca was waiting for them in the same conference room, but this time she wasn't alone. 2 FBI agents were with her, both wearing suits and serious expressions. What's going on? Victoria asked. Rebecca gestured to the agents. This is Agent Morris and Agent Chen. They're with the white-collar crime division. Why are they here? Ethan asked. Because this just got bigger, Agent Morris said. He was tall, with graying hair and a voice that sounded like gravel. We've been building a case against Meridian Holdings for the past year. Financial fraud, extortion, racketeering. But we didn't have enough to move forward. Until now. He pulled up a file on the laptop and turned it toward them. It was a photo of Marcus Hale, standing outside a building Ethan didn't recognize. We've been watching him, Morris said, but he's careful, always uses cutouts, always keeps his hands clean. Your files, the ones Trask provided, they're the first direct evidence we've seen tying him to illegal activity. So you're going after him? Victoria asked. We already are, Agent Chen said. She was younger, sharper, with a no-nonsense air. We executed a warrant on his office 2 hours ago. Seized his computers, his files, everything. Ethan felt his stomach lurch. You did what? Seized his sets. We moved fast, Morris said, before he had a chance to destroy evidence. And did you find anything? Victoria asked. Morris and Chen exchanged a look. Yeah, Morris said. We found something. A lot of somethings. He pulled up another file. This one was an email thread between Marcus and someone named David Kellerman. The subject line read, Phase 2, Escalation Protocol. Ethan scanned the email. His blood went cold. The email detailed a plan to apply additional pressure to targets who refused to sell. It mentioned Ethan by name, and it mentioned Victoria, but it also mentioned something else. A timeline, a deadline. What's Phase 2? Ethan asked. We're still piecing it together, Chen said. But based on what we've found, it looks like Marcus was planning to escalate. Physical intimidation, property damage, maybe worse. Worse how? Victoria's voice was tight. Morris didn't answer. He just pulled up another file. This one was a contract, a payment agreement between Meridian Holdings and a private security firm called Blackstone Solutions. The amount was $200,000. The description read, Asset protection and target neutralization. Asset protection? Ethan repeated. That's a fancy way of saying hired muscle. Or hired killers, Victoria said. Morris nodded. We think Marcus was planning to take more direct action, and based on the timeline in the emails, it was supposed to start this week. Ethan felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. So we're not safe. No, Morris said. You're not. They spent the next hour going through everything the FBI had found. The emails, the contracts, the web of shell companies that Marcus had built to hide his money. It was overwhelming and terrifying. What do we do now? Ethan asked. We put you in protective custody, Morris said. Both of you, until we can bring Marcus in. You're arresting him, Victoria asked. We're trying, Chen said. But he's not at his office, not at his home. We've got people looking, but so far nothing. So he's in the wind, Leo said. Maybe. Or maybe he's planning his next move. Victoria stood. I'm not hiding. Victoria swore, Morris started. I've spent my whole life dealing with people like Marcus. I'm not going to let him scare me into a safe house. This isn't about pride, Morris said. This is about keeping you alive. I'll keep myself alive. With what? Your money? Your lawyers? Morris leaned forward. Marcus Hale just found out the FBI raided his office. He knows we're coming for him. And if he thinks you're the reason, he's going to come after you, hard. Victoria didn't respond. She just stared at him, her jaw tight. Please, Morris said. Just until we find him. Victoria looked at Ethan. He could see the conflict in her eyes. The part of her that wanted to fight. And the part of her that knew Morris was right. All right, she said finally, but just until you find him. Morris nodded. We'll set it up tonight. Budge shouts. The safe house was in Marin County, a nondescript cabin tucked into the hills. It was small, isolated, and heavily guarded. 2 agents were stationed outside, and the place was equipped with enough security cameras to make a casino jealous. Ethan, Victoria, and Trask were given separate rooms. Ethan's was barely bigger than a closet, with a single bed and a window that overlooked the woods. He sat on the bed and pulled out his phone. There was a message from Linda. Mason's doing fine. Asks about you every day. Stay safe. Ethan typed out a response. Tell him I'll be home soon. He hit send and stared at the screen. He wasn't sure if it was true, but he needed to believe it. There was a knock on the door. Victoria. Can I come in? Yeah. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. How are you holding up? I don't know. Ethan set his phone down. This whole thing feels surreal. Yep. Oh. She sat down next to him. I keep thinking about what Morris said about Phase 2. You think Marcus would have really hurt us? I think he would have done whatever it took to get what he wanted. Victoria's voice was quiet. And I think we got lucky. Lucky, Ethan repeated. Is that what you call this? Victoria almost smiled. Compared to the alternative? Yeah. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the wind rattled the trees and Ethan could hear the faint hum of a generator. What happens after this? Ethan asked. After they arrest Marcus, after the trial, what happens to us? I don't know, Victoria said. I go back to San Francisco. You go back to Missouri. And we try to move on. Just like that? Just like that. Ethan looked at her. You really think it's that simple? No. She met his eyes, but I don't know what else to say. Neither did Ethan. The next morning, Agent Morris showed up with news. We found him, he said. Victoria stood. Where? Mexico, Cabo San Lucas. He flew out last night on a private jet. So he's gone, Ethan said. For now. But we've got an extradition request in the works, and we've frozen his assets. He can't move money without us knowing. How long until you bring him back? Victoria asked. Could be weeks, could be months. Depends on how much he fights it. Victoria's jaw tightened. So we just sit here and wait? You stay safe, Morris said. That's the priority. Victoria didn't respond. She just turned and walked out of the room. Ethan followed her. She was standing on the porch, staring out at the trees. You okay? He asked. No. Her voice was hard. I'm tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of letting people like Marcus control my life. We're not running, we're staying alive. Is there a difference? Ethan didn't have an answer for that. They stood there for a long time, the wind moving through the trees, the sun filtering through the branches. And for the first time since this whole thing started, Ethan wondered if they were ever going to get their lives back. 3 days passed in the safe house, and they felt like 3 years. Ethan spent most of his time pacing, staring out windows, checking his phone for messages from Linda about Mason. Victoria worked from her laptop, managing her company remotely, pretending like everything was normal. Trask mostly stayed in his room, too scared to do much else. On the 4th morning, Agent Morris showed up earlier than usual. Ethan could tell from his expression that something had changed. "We've got a problem," Morris said. Victoria looked up from her laptop. "What kind of problem?" "Marcus posted bail." "Bail?" Victoria's voice went sharp. "You arrested him?" "Mexican authorities did. 2 days ago. We were processing the extradition paperwork when his lawyers swooped in. They argued he wasn't a flight risk, posted $10 million in cash, and a judge let him walk." "He's back in the States?" Ethan asked. "No, he's still in Cabo, but he's not in custody anymore." Morris ran a hand through his hair. "And that means he's free to move, to plan, to come after you." "So what do we do?" Victoria asked. "You stay here, we tighten security, and we work on getting him back in custody." "How long will that take?" "I don't know." Victoria stood. "That's not good enough." "It's all I've got." She walked to the window, her arms crossed. Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her jaw was working like she was trying not to say something she'd regret. "There has to be another way," she said. "There isn't," Morris said. "Not unless you want to take the law into your own hands, and I strongly advise against that." Victoria didn't respond. She just kept staring out the window. Morris looked at Ethan. "Keep her here. Don't let her do anything stupid. I'll try," Ethan said, though he wasn't sure he could stop Victoria from doing anything if she'd made up her mind. Morris left, and the cabin fell silent again. Ethan walked over to Victoria. "You're thinking something," he said. "I'm always thinking something. I mean something dangerous." She glanced at him. "Why would you say that?" "Because I'm starting to know you. And that look on your face? That's the same look you had before we broke into Trask's apartment." Victoria almost smiled. "We didn't break in. He let us in." After the fact, she turned away from the window. "Marcus isn't going to stop, even if they bring him back, even if they charge him. He's got enough money and enough lawyers to drag this out for years, and in the meantime, we're stuck here, hiding, while he gets to live his life in some beach resort. So what are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we stop waiting for someone else to fix this." "And do what?" Victoria pulled out her phone and started typing. "I'm going to make a call." "To who?" "Someone who can help." Before Ethan could ask more, she walked out of the room, phone pressed to her ear. He stood there for a moment, then followed her outside. She was on the porch, pacing back and forth, her voice low but intense. Ethan couldn't hear what she was saying, but he could tell from her body language that whoever was on the other end wasn't agreeing with her. When she finally hung up, she looked frustrated. "Well?" Ethan asked. "I've got a friend, journalist, investigative type. She's been trying to expose corporate corruption for years. I just fed her everything we have on Marcus." "You gave her the files?" "Not the originals. Leo made copies." Victoria leaned against the porch railing. "If we can't put Marcus in prison right now, we can at least destroy his reputation. Make it impossible for him to operate." "You think a news story is going to stop him?" "I think it's a start." She looked at Ethan. "Marcus thrives in the shadows. He uses shell companies and intermediaries because he doesn't want anyone looking too closely. But if we shine a light on everything he's done, every illegal deal, every person he's hurt, it becomes a lot harder for him to function." Ethan thought about it. "And when he figures out we're the ones who leaked it, he already knows we're the ones who went to the FBI. This doesn't change anything. Except now he's going to be even more pissed." "Good," Victoria said. "Let him be pissed. Let him know we're not backing down." Ethan wanted to argue, but he couldn't, because as reckless as it sounded, Victoria was right. They couldn't just sit here and hope the system worked. They had to fight back. "All right," he said. "So what's the timeline?" "The story runs tomorrow, front page of the Chronicle. My friend's been working on it for months, but she didn't have the evidence. Now she does." "And then what?" Victoria pushed off the railing. "Then we wait and see what Marcus does." The story broke the next morning, and it was everywhere. The San Francisco Chronicle ran it as their lead. Within hours, it had been picked up by national outlets. Cable news, online blogs, social media. The headline read, "Billionaire developer accused of extortion and fraud in multi-state land scheme. Ethan read it on his phone, sitting at the kitchen table in the safe house. The article laid out everything. The fake identities, the harassment campaigns, the shell companies, Trask's testimony, photos of the emails between Marcus and his hired contractors. It was damning, and it was public. Victoria stood by the window watching the news on her laptop. Every channel was covering it. Some called it the biggest corporate scandal of the year. Others were already speculating about criminal charges. "This is working," she said. "Maybe," Ethan said. "Or maybe we just painted an even bigger target on our backs." Victoria's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, then answered. "Rebecca, I assume you saw the news." But Ethan couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but he could tell from Victoria's expression that the prosecutor wasn't happy. "I understand," Victoria said, "but we didn't leak classified information. Everything in that article came from files that were already in the public domain." A pause. "No, I'm not apologizing." But Another pause. Because Marcus Hale has been terrorizing people for years, and someone needed to hold him accountable." She hung up. "She's mad," Ethan said. "She'll get over it." Victoria set her phone down. "What matters is that Marcus can't hide anymore. Everyone knows what he's done." As if on cue, her phone rang again. This time, it was a number she didn't recognize. She answered anyway. "Victoria Hale." The voice on the other end was cold and familiar. Ethan could hear it even from across the table. "You made a mistake," Marcus said. Victoria's face went hard. "Did I? You think a news story is going to stop me? You think exposing my business is going to change anything? I think it's going to make it a lot harder for you to operate." Marcus laughed. "You're smarter than that, Victoria. You know how this works. The news cycle moves on. People forget. And when they do, I'll still be here. And you'll still be a problem I need to solve." Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." His voice dropped. "You should have taken my offer when you had the chance. Now it's too late." The line went dead. Victoria stood there for a moment, staring at her phone. Then she threw it across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor. "Feel better?" Ethan asked. "No." She sat down, her hands shaking. Ethan had never seen her like this. Angry, yes. Frustrated, definitely. But this was different. This was fear. "He's not going to stop," she said. "I know. Even if they arrest him, even if they charge him, he's got too much money, too many resources. He'll find a way." "Maybe," Ethan said, "but right now he's on the defensive. And that's better than where we were 3 days ago." Victoria looked at him. "You really believe that?" "I have to." Quote, that afternoon, Agent Morris showed up with more news. This time, it was better. "Mexican authorities revoked Marcus's bail," he said. "He's back in custody." "Why?" Victoria asked. Pressure from the State Department. And the fact that his face is all over the news didn't help. The judge decided he was a flight risk after all. "So he's stuck there, Ethan said. "For now. We've expedited the extradition. Should have him back in the States within a week." "Yay." Victoria leaned back in her chair. "And then what? He posts bail here, and we're back where we started?" "Not if we can help it," Morris said. "With the evidence we've got, we're pushing for no bail, flight risk, danger to witnesses, the works." "You think a judge will go for that?" "I think the article this morning helped our case." Morris almost smiled. "Turns out public pressure works sometimes." For the first time in days, Ethan felt something close to hope. It wasn't much, but it was something. "What about us?" Victoria asked. "How long do we have to stay here?" "Until Marcus is in custody on U.S. soil. After that, you're free to go, though I'd recommend keeping a low profile for a while." Victoria nodded. "Fine." "Victoria." Morris left, and the cabin fell quiet again. Ethan walked outside, needing air. The afternoon sun was warm on his face, and he could hear birds in the trees. For a moment, it almost felt normal. Victoria joined him a few minutes later. "You think this is really over?" she asked. "I think it's closer to over than it was yesterday." "That's not the same thing." "No," Ethan said, "but it's all we've got right now." Eso achi shomawa. They stood there in silence, watching the trees sway in the breeze. Ethan thought about Mason, about going home, about what life would look like when all of this was done. What are you going to do? Victoria asked. After this. Go back to Missouri, fix my fence, try to forget any of this happened. And if you can't forget? Ethan looked at her. Then I guess I'll learn to live with it. Victoria nodded. Yeah, me too. A week later, Marcus Hale was extradited to the United States. He arrived in San Francisco in handcuffs, escorted by federal agents, and was taken directly to a holding facility. The news covered it like a circus. Cameras everywhere. Reporters shouting questions. Ethan watched it on TV from Victoria's condo. They'd been cleared to leave the safe house the day before, and he was preparing to fly back to Missouri. Victoria sat next to him, her face unreadable. How do you feel? Ethan asked. I don't know yet. On the screen, Marcus was being led into the courthouse for his arraignment. He looked smaller than Ethan remembered, older, like the weight of everything had finally caught up with him. The judge denied bail. Marcus's lawyers argued. The prosecutor presented the evidence. And in the end, the judge ruled that Marcus Hale was a danger to the community and a flight risk. He'd be held without bail until trial. Victoria let out a breath she'd been holding. It's done, sis. Not yet, Ethan said. But soon. She nodded. Soon. That evening, Ethan packed his bag. His flight was early the next morning, and he wanted to get a full night's sleep before the trip home. Victoria was in the kitchen, working on something on her laptop, as usual. He walked out to say goodbye. Thanks, he said. For everything. Victoria looked up. I should be thanking you. You didn't have to get involved in this. I didn't have a choice. Marcus made sure of that. Still, she closed the laptop. You could have walked away, sold your land, disappeared, but you didn't. Neither did you. She almost smiled. No, I guess I didn't. They stood there for a moment, and Ethan realized how strange it was going to be to go back to his normal life. A week ago, he didn't know Victoria Hale existed. Now, he couldn't imagine the past few days without her. If you're ever in Missouri, he said, you've got a place to stay. I'll keep that in mind. Ooh, I mean it. Mason would love to meet you, properly, I mean, not with a shotgun. Victoria laughed. I'd like that. Ethan turned to leave, then stopped. What are you going to do after the trial? I don't know, Victoria said. Maybe take some time off, travel, figure out what I want my life to look like. Iti? Sounds like a plan. Or maybe I'll come visit Missouri. See what all the fuss is about. Ethan smiled. It's not much, but it's home. That's more than most people have. Oh, he nodded. Yeah, I guess it is. The next morning, Ethan flew back to Kansas City. Linda picked him up from the airport, and the first thing he did was drive to her house to see Mason. The boy ran out the front door before Ethan even had the truck in park. Dad! Ethan scooped him up, holding him tight. Hey, bud. I missed you. I missed you too. Mason pulled back, looking at him. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Mrs. Marsh said you were helping someone. I was. Did it work? Ethan thought about Marcus Hale sitting in a cell, about Victoria, finally free from the fear that had haunted her for months, about the files that were now in the hands of prosecutors who would make sure justice was done. Yeah, he said, it worked. They drove home together, and as Ethan pulled up to his house, he felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. The land was still there. The house was still standing. Everything was the same, except him. He'd been through something that changed the way he saw the world. And even though he was home, he knew things would never be quite the same again. 2 months later, the trial began. Ethan didn't attend. He followed it on the news, watching as prosecutors laid out their case. Trask testified. Leo testified. Even Victoria took the stand, walking the jury through the months of harassment and fear. The defense tried to poke holes in the evidence, tried to paint Marcus as a misunderstood businessman caught up in a conspiracy. But the files didn't lie. The emails didn't lie. And the jury didn't buy it. Marcus Hale was convicted on 14 counts: fraud, extortion, racketeering, conspiracy. The sentencing came a month later, 25 years in federal prison. Ethan watched the news coverage from his living room, Mason asleep on the couch next to him. When the verdict was read, he felt a weight lift off his shoulders. It was over. Really over. Though? A week after the sentencing, Victoria called. "Hey," she said. "Hey, I saw the news. Congratulations." "Thanks. Feels surreal." "I bet." There was a pause. "I'm actually in Kansas City." Ethan sat up. "You're what?" "I flew in this morning. Had some business to take care of. I thought maybe I'd drive out to your place, if that's okay." "Yeah, of course." "Good. I'll be there in an hour." She hung up before he could say anything else. Ethan spent the next hour cleaning the house, making sure Mason's toys weren't scattered everywhere, trying to make the place look halfway decent. When he saw her car pull up the driveway, he stepped out onto the porch. Victoria got out looking more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked like a different person. "Nice place," she said, looking around. "Thanks. It's not much." "It's perfect." Mason came running out, and Ethan introduced them properly this time. "Mason, this is Victoria. Victoria, this is my son." Victoria crouched down to Mason's level. "Hi, Mason. Your dad's told me a lot about you." "He told me about you too," Mason said. "He said you had a shotgun." Victoria laughed. "I did, but I don't anymore." "That's good. Shotguns are scary." "Yeah," Victoria said. "They are." They spent the afternoon talking. Victoria told them about the trial, about what came next, about how strange it felt to finally be free. Ethan talked about the farm, about fixing things that had broken while he was gone, about how good it felt to be home. As the sun started to set, Victoria stood to leave. "Thanks for having me," she said. "Anytime." She hesitated, then looked at him. "I meant what I said before, about figuring out what I want my life to look like. And I think part of that is spending more time with people who remind me what matters." Ethan smiled. "You're always welcome here. I might take you up on that." She got in her car and drove away, and Ethan stood on the porch watching her go. Mason tugged on his sleeve. "I like her," Mason said. "Yeah, well, Ethan said. "Me too." Life went back to normal, or as normal as it could be after everything that had happened. Ethan fixed the fence, planted a garden, spent his days with Mason, watching him grow, trying to give him the kind of childhood he deserved. But every now and then, his phone would buzz. A text from Victoria, a photo from wherever she was traveling, a funny story about something that happened in a board meeting, a question about farm life. And every now and then she'd visit, not often, but enough. Enough that Ethan started to realize something. That the woman who'd shown up on his porch with a shotgun had become one of the most important people in his life. That the crisis they'd survived together had forged a bond he didn't quite know how to name. And maybe that was okay. Maybe it didn't need a name. Maybe it was enough to know that they'd faced something terrible together and come out the other side. Stronger, scarred, but alive. And that was more than most people could say. 6 months after Marcus Hale's sentencing, Ethan stood in his kitchen making coffee and realized he'd stopped looking over his shoulder. It had become a habit during those weeks in San Francisco, that constant awareness of being watched, the tension in his neck that never quite went away. But somewhere along the line, it had faded. The fear had loosened its grip. Mason was at the table working on a drawing. He'd gotten into art lately, filling notebooks with sketches of the farm, the animals, sometimes Victoria. He'd only met her a handful of times, but she'd made an impression. "Dad, can Victoria come visit again soon?" Mason asked without looking up from his paper. "I don't know, bud. She's pretty busy. She said she'd teach me how to play chess." "She did?" "Last time she was here. She said chess is about thinking 3 moves ahead." "Ika." Ethan smiled. That sounded like Victoria. Always planning, always strategizing. Even when she was trying to relax, her mind was working. His phone buzzed. "Speak of the devil." The text was short. "Free this weekend?" Ethan typed back. "Always. What's up?" "Need to talk. In person." He stared at the message for a moment. Victoria wasn't usually cryptic. If she needed to talk, it was either something serious or something she didn't want to say over the phone. "When can you get here?" he typed. "Tomorrow afternoon." "See you then." He set the phone down and looked at Mason. "Looks like you're getting your wish." Mason's face lit up. "Victoria's coming? Tomorrow. Can we make her dinner?" Ethan thought about his cooking skills, which were limited to grilled cheese and spaghetti. "We can try." Victoria arrived the next day just after 3. Ethan watched her car pull up the driveway, the same rental she always got when she flew into Kansas City. She stepped out wearing jeans and a jacket, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked tired. "Hey," Ethan said, walking down from the porch. "Hey." She gave him a small smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "You okay?" "Yeah, just a long few weeks." Mason came running out, and Victoria's expression softened. "Mason, look at you. Did you get taller?" "Maybe," Mason said proudly. "I'm growing. I can see that." She pulled a small box from her bag. "I brought you something." Mason opened it. Inside was a wooden chess set, the pieces hand-carved and polished. "Whoa," Mason breathed. "This is so cool." Your dad said you wanted to learn," Victoria said. "So I figured you should have a proper set. Can we play now?" "Oh." Victoria glanced at Ethan. "Mind if I steal your son for a bit?" "Go ahead." They set up the board on the porch table, and Victoria started teaching Mason the basics. Ethan watched from the doorway, listening to her patient explanations, the way she adjusted her teaching to Mason's level. She was good with him, natural in a way that surprised Ethan. After an hour, Mason was yawning, and Victoria sent him inside to wash up for dinner. Ethan started grilling burgers while Victoria sat on the porch steps, staring out at the fields. "You going to tell me what's going on?" Ethan asked. Victoria was quiet for a moment. "I'm selling the company." Ethan nearly dropped the spatula. "What?" "Hale Industries. I'm selling it." "Why?" she sighed. "Because I'm tired of fighting. Tired of board meetings and hostile takeovers and people trying to undermine me because I'm a woman or because I'm too young or because I didn't earn it the right way." She looked at him. "I've spent my whole life trying to prove I deserve my father's company, and I just realized I don't care anymore." Ethan sat down next to her. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. That's kind of the point." She picked at a splinter on the porch step. "My whole life has been about living up to other people's expectations. My father's, the board's, the shareholders. I want to figure out what I actually want. And you came here to tell me that?" "I came here because you're one of the few people who doesn't expect anything from me." She met his eyes. "When I'm here, I'm just Victoria, not the CEO, not the heiress. Just me." Ethan didn't know what to say to that. He'd never thought about it that way, but she was right. He didn't care about her money or her company. He cared about the woman who'd shown up on his porch with a shotgun and somehow become part of his life. "You're always welcome here," he said. "You know that." "I do." She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "That's why I came." They ate dinner on the porch, burgers and corn, and the kind of simple food that tasted better when you were sharing it with people you cared about. Mason talked nonstop about school and his drawings and a frog he'd found by the creek. Victoria listened like it was the most interesting thing she'd heard all week. After Mason went to bed, Ethan and Victoria sat outside with beers, watching the stars. The night was clear, the kind of sky you only got out in the country, away from city lights. "I used to hate this," Victoria said. "The quiet, the dark. It made me nervous. And now? Now I get it." She took a sip of her beer. "There's something peaceful about it, like the world slows down enough that you can actually think." "That's why I never left," Ethan said. "Even when things got hard, even when I thought about selling and moving somewhere easier, this place keeps me grounded." "Your dad's land, right?" "My grandfather's, actually. He bought it in the 50s, built the house with his own hands. My dad inherited it, and then I did." Ethan looked out at the fields. It's not worth much. Ethan looked. Not compared to what Marcus was offering, but it's mine. And that means something. Victoria nodded. I think I'm starting to understand that. The difference between what something's worth and what it means. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Ethan thought about how strange it was, this friendship they'd built. They came from completely different worlds, different lives, different everything. But somehow, it worked. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. Sure. Do you ever regret it, getting involved in all this? Ethan thought about it. Sometimes. When I think about how close we came to getting hurt, how close Mason came to losing his dad. He paused. But then I think about what would have happened if I'd just sold, if I'd let Marcus win. And I realize I couldn't live with that. Not just because of the land, but because of what it would have taught Mason. What's that? That you back down when things get hard, that you let bullies win because it's easier. Ethan shook his head. I don't want him to grow up thinking that's how the world works. But sometimes it is, Victoria said quietly. Maybe. But that doesn't mean we have to accept it. Victoria looked at him, something shifting in her expression. You know what I admire about you? What? You're not afraid to care. About your land, about your son, about doing the right thing even when it costs you. She set her beer down. I spent so many years building walls, protecting myself, making sure no one could get close enough to hurt me. And then this whole thing happened, and I realized the walls weren't keeping me safe. They were just keeping me alone. Lars Bandeshi. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. He'd never thought of Victoria as alone. She had money, power, connections. But he was starting to understand that none of that mattered if you didn't have people who actually knew you. You're not alone anymore, he said. No, Victoria said. I guess I'm not. This is that. The next morning, Victoria stayed for breakfast. Mason made her try his attempt at pancakes, which came out lumpy and half-burned but tasted better than they looked. Afterward, Victoria helped Mason set up the chessboard again, walking him through a few basic strategies. Ethan watched them from the kitchen, washing dishes and thinking about the past year. How much had changed? How much he'd changed? Around noon, Victoria's phone rang. She glanced at it, frowned, and answered. Rebecca. Hi. A pause. When? Another pause. All right. I'll be there. She hung up and looked at Ethan. That was the prosecutor. Marcus's appeal was denied. That's good news, right? Yeah, it means the conviction stands 25 years, no parole for at least 15. She sat down. It's really over. Ethan sat across from her. How does that feel? Honestly, I don't know. I thought I'd feel relieved or vindicated, but mostly I just feel tired. That's normal, Ethan said. You've been fighting for so long. Now that it's done, your body's catching up. Maybe. She looked at Mason, who was studying the chessboard like it held the secrets of the universe. You ever think about what happens next, after you survive something like this? All the time. And I think you just keep living. You take care of the people you love. You fix what's broken. You plant things and watch them grow. Ethan shrugged. It's not dramatic, but it's enough. Victoria smiled. I like that. She left that afternoon, but not before promising Mason she'd come back soon. As her car disappeared down the driveway, Ethan felt the same strange mix of emotions he always felt when she left. Glad she'd come, sad to see her go. Hopeful she'd return. Mason tugged on his sleeve. Dad, do you like Victoria? Of course I do. No, I mean, like her. Ethan looked down at his son. Where'd you hear that? All right. Mrs. Marsh said it. She said you look at Victoria the way people look at each other in movies. Ethan didn't know whether to laugh or be embarrassed. Mrs. Marsh talks too much. So do you? Do I what? Like her? Ethan thought about it. The truth was complicated. He cared about Victoria, more than he'd cared about anyone in a long time. But their lives were so different. She had a company to sell, a whole world of possibilities ahead of her. He had a farm in Missouri and a kid to raise. What would that even look like? Yeah, Ethan said finally. I like her. Mason grinned. Good. Me too. Thus, 3 weeks later, Victoria called with news. I closed the deal, she said. Hale Industries is officially sold. How do you feel? Lighter, she laughed, and terrified. I've never not had a plan before. So what's the plan now? That's the thing. I don't have one. For the first time in my life, I can do whatever I want, and I have no idea what that is. Ethan smiled. Sounds like freedom to me. Yeah, it does. There was a pause. Then Victoria said, I'm thinking about taking some time off. Maybe traveling. Seeing places I've always wanted to go but never had time for. That sounds good. Or maybe I'll just drive out to Missouri and bother you for a while. Ethan's heart skipped. You're always welcome. I know. Her voice softened. That's why I keep coming back. What? A month later, Victoria showed up with 2 suitcases and no return ticket. I hope this is okay, she said when Ethan opened the door. I know I should have called, but I figured if I gave you time to think about it, you'd try to talk me out of it. Talk you out of what? Staying, for a while, maybe a long while. She looked nervous, which was strange to see on someone usually so confident. I sold my condo in San Francisco. I've got some money set aside, and I thought maybe I'd try living somewhere that doesn't make me want to scream into a pillow every night. Ethan stared at her. You want to stay here? If you'll have me, I don't need much. Just a place to figure things out. Victoria, you don't have to. I want to, she said. I've spent the past month trying to figure out where I belong. And every time I tried to picture my future, you were in it. You and Mason and this place. She met his eyes. I know it's crazy. I know we're from different worlds. But I don't care anymore. I'm tired of living my life based on what makes sense. I want to live it based on what makes me happy. Ethan didn't know what to say. He thought about all the reasons this shouldn't work, all the ways it could go wrong. And then he thought about the past year, about everything they'd survived together, about the way his house felt emptier every time she left. Stay, he said. Victoria smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made everything else fade away. Yeah? Yeah. Mason appeared behind Ethan, grinning. Victoria, are you moving in? Maybe, Victoria said. Is that okay with you? Yes. Mason ran forward and hugged her. You can have the guest room, and I'll teach you about the farm, and we can play chess every day. Victoria laughed, and Ethan saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Joy. Real, uncomplicated joy. The first few weeks were an adjustment. Victoria had never lived on a farm before, and there was a learning curve. She ruined a pair of expensive shoes in the mud, got chased by a rooster, burned dinner more than once, but she didn't complain. If anything, she seemed to enjoy the challenge. She started helping around the farm, learning how to mend fences and feed the animals and fix things that broke. She was terrible at most of it, but she tried, and slowly she got better. Ethan watched her change. The tension in her shoulders eased. She smiled more, laughed more, started sleeping through the night without waking up in a panic. And somewhere along the way, they stopped being 2 people thrown together by circumstance and became something more. It happened gradually in small moments. Victoria's hand on his shoulder when he was fixing the tractor, the way she looked at him across the dinner table. The night she fell asleep on the couch and he carried her to bed, and she whispered thank you without opening her eyes. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't perfect, but it was real. One evening, about 3 months after Victoria had moved in, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Mason was inside, already asleep after a long day of playing. I talked to Rebecca today, Victoria said. How's she doing? Good. She said they're using Marcus's case as a blueprint for going after other corporate criminals. Apparently we started something. That's good. Ije. Yeah. Victoria was quiet for a moment. She also told me something else. Marcus tried to send me a letter from prison. Ethan looked at her. What did it say? I don't know. I didn't read it. Told her to send it back. You're not curious? No. Victoria shook her head. Whatever he has to say, I don't need to hear it. He doesn't get to have any more of my time or my energy. That part of my life is over. Ethan reached over and took her hand. I'm proud of you. For what? For letting go. That's harder than holding on. Victoria squeezed his hand. I learned that from you. From me? Yeah. You could have held on to your anger about what Marcus did, about what he put you through, but you didn't. You just moved on, built your life back up, and that taught me something. What's that? That the best revenge is living well. She looked at him. Marcus is in prison. We're here, and I'd say we're doing pretty damn well. Ethan smiled. Yeah, we are, yeah. A year after Victoria moved in, they made it official. No big wedding, no fancy ceremony. Just a quiet afternoon at the courthouse in town, with Mason as their witness and Linda Marsh crying in the front row. Afterward, they had a small party at the farm. Leo flew in from San Francisco. Rebecca came with her husband. Dennis and a few other friends Victoria had made along the way. It was simple and messy and perfect. Mason gave a toast that was mostly about how happy he was to have Victoria as his mom, which made her cry. Leo told an embarrassing story about the time they broke into Trask's apartment, which made everyone laugh. And Ethan stood up and said the only thing he could think to say. A year ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I was going to lose everything. And in a way, I did. I lost the version of myself that thought I could control everything. That thought I had to do it all alone. He looked at Victoria. But I gained something better. I gained a partner. Someone who's strong enough to stand with me and stubborn enough to call me on my nonsense. And I gained a family. Not the one I was born into, but the one I chose. Victoria stood and kissed him, and everyone cheered. 2 years later, Victoria was pregnant. It surprised both of them. They'd talked about kids in an abstract way, but Victoria had always assumed that part of her life was over. She was 33, focused on building her new life and didn't think it was in the cards. But life had a way of surprising you. Mason was thrilled. He talked nonstop about being a big brother, making lists of things he'd teach the baby, drawing pictures of what their family would look like. Victoria was terrified, not because she didn't want the baby, but because she'd never been someone's mother before. She didn't know if she'd be good at it. You'll be fine, Ethan said one night as they lay in bed, his hand on her stomach. How do you know? Because you care. That's all it takes. That can't be all it takes. Ethan smiled. Okay, you also have to change a lot of diapers, and lose a lot of sleep, and worry constantly about whether you're screwing them up. Victoria laughed. You're not helping. I'm serious. That's what parenting is. You do your best, and you mess up, and you keep trying anyway. And somehow, they turn out okay. And if they don't, then you love them anyway. He kissed her forehead. You're going to be a great mom. Victoria hoped he was right. Their daughter was born on a cold December morning, screaming her head off and perfect in every way. They named her Claire, after Victoria's mother. Ethan held her in the hospital room, marveling at how small she was, how fragile. Mason stood next to him, peering at his sister with a mix of awe and terror. She's so tiny, Mason whispered. You were too once, Ethan said. Can I hold her? Sure, sit down first. Up. Ethan carefully placed Claire in Mason's arms, and the boy's face lit up. Hi, Claire. I'm your big brother. I'm going to teach you everything. Victoria watched from the bed, exhausted and happy, and more terrified than she'd ever been. But when Ethan sat next to her and wrapped an arm around her shoulders, she felt something she'd never felt before. Safe. Loved. Home. The years that followed weren't perfect. There were hard days. Days when money was tight and the farm was struggling. Days when Victoria missed her old life, the power and control and certainty of it. Days when Ethan wondered if they'd made a mistake, trying to blend their worlds. But there were more good days than bad. Days when Mason taught Claire how to catch fireflies. Days when Victoria surprised herself by fixing the truck without help. Days when Ethan woke up and realized he couldn't imagine his life any other way. They built something together. Not just a family, but a life. One rooted in trust and resilience and the quiet strength that comes from surviving something terrible and choosing to keep going anyway. And when people asked Victoria how she'd ended up on a farm in Missouri, married to a single dad and raising 2 kids, she always gave the same answer. "I stopped running," she'd say, "and I started living." On a warm spring evening, 5 years after Marcus Hale went to prison, Ethan stood on his porch watching his family. Mason was 14 now, tall and lanky, teaching Claire how to throw a football. Victoria was in the garden, her hands covered in dirt, laughing at something Claire said. This was his life now. Not the one he'd planned, not the one he'd expected, but the one he'd fought for. The one he'd built from the wreckage of someone else's greed. Victoria looked up and caught his eye. She smiled, and he smiled back. They'd survived. They'd won. Not because they were stronger or smarter or richer than Marcus Hale, but because they'd refused to give up. They'd refused to let fear control them, and they'd found each other in the process. Mason threw the football, and Claire caught it, squealing with delight. Victoria walked over to Ethan and slipped her hand into his. "You know what I was thinking?" she said. "What's that?" That I'm glad Marcus showed up that day. Not because of what he did, but because of where it led. Ethan looked at her. "You're glad you came here with a shotgun?" "I'm glad I found you." She leaned against him. "I spent so much of my life trying to be someone I wasn't, trying to live up to impossible standards. And then I met you, and I realized I didn't have to be perfect. I just had to be real." "You're pretty real," Ethan said. "So are you." They stood there watching their kids play, the sun setting over the fields. And Ethan thought about all the things he'd learned over the past few years, about courage and fear and the difference between the two, about how sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best thing, about how home isn't a place. It's the people you choose to stand with when everything falls apart. "Dad," Claire called, "come play with us." Ethan looked at Victoria. "You coming?" "Wouldn't miss it." They walked down from the porch together, hand in hand, and joined their kids in the yard. And as the last light of day faded into evening, Ethan felt something he'd been chasing his whole life without knowing it. Peace. Not the kind that comes from avoiding conflict or pretending everything's fine, but the kind that comes from facing the worst and finding your way through, from choosing love over fear, from building something worth protecting and then protecting it with everything you have. This was his life. Messy and imperfect and more than he'd ever hoped for. And he wouldn't trade it for anything. Because in the end, that's what it all came down to. Not the land or the money or the fight, but the people you loved and the life you built with them. Everything else was just noise. And the quiet that followed was worth every battle they'd fought to earn it.